I never thought my wife of 8 years would leave me for her coworker. But finding Amanda's goodbye letter next to divorce papers was just the beginning. When she texted from Bali with her affair partner demanding half of my family's trust fund that was coming due on my 35th birthday, I realized how little she knew me. She thought she had carefully calculated everything, including a life of luxury with my money. But there was one crucial detail she had overlooked. If you have ever been betrayed by someone who was only after what you could provide them, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to join me for this wild journey of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately, freedom. Amanda and I met during my second year of law school at a local coffee shop near campus. I was buried in case studies when she accidentally spilled her latte on my textbook. Instead of getting angry, I found myself captivated by her genuine apology and infectious laugh. She insisted on buying me dinner to make up for ruining my book, and that spontaneous meal turned into a 4-hour conversation. I have never met someone who can make tort law sound interesting, she said, her eyes sparkling in the dim restaurant lighting. Amanda was working as a marketing assistant at a local firm while taking night classes in business. She described her childhood in rural Pennsylvania, how she had fought to be the first in her family to attend college, and her dreams of eventually running her own marketing agency. I want to prove that a farm girl can make it big in the city, she told me, determination evident in her voice. I was instantly attracted to her ambition and work ethic values my parents had instilled in me despite our family wealth. Growing up, my parents had been careful to raise me with a strong appreciation for hard work and humility. While my family had a substantial trust fund set up for me, they never flaunted their wealth, and I rarely discussed it. During those early dating days, Amanda and I bonded over our shared love of ambitious goals and quiet evenings. We would spend weekends hiking local trails, exploring museums, or simply cooking elaborate meals together in my modest apartment. I appreciated that she seemed more interested in my thoughts and dreams than in material possessions. 6 months into our relationship, I took Amanda to meet my family at their lake house. My parents were welcoming but naturally protective. My father, a retired judge, questioned Amanda at length about her background and aspirations. My mother, always the keen observer, watched our interactions carefully. "She seems lovely," my mother said privately after dinner, "but make sure she loves you for who you are, not what you have." At the time, I dismissed my mother's concern as overprotective parenting. Amanda had no idea about the full extent of my family's wealth, or my trust fund, which would become accessible when I turned 35. I had only mentioned that my family was comfortable and had helped pay for my education. After I graduated law school, I joined a public defender's office rather than accepting lucrative offers from corporate firms. Amanda seemed supportive of my decision, though she occasionally made comments about my wasted potential to earn more. "You could be making 3 times this salary at Winston & Briggs," she would say. "Think about what we could do with that kind of money." I always explained that helping people who could not afford legal representation was my passion, not maximizing my income. She would eventually nod in understanding, though I sometimes caught a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. 2 years into our relationship, I proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. I had saved for months to buy a modest but elegant diamond ring. Amanda seemed genuinely moved by the proposal, tears streaming down her face as she accepted. "I cannot wait to build a life with you," she whispered, as I slipped the ring on her finger. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Rather than an extravagant honeymoon, we opted to put a down payment on a comfortable 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. It was within our budget with both our salaries, and we agreed it would be perfect for starting a family in a few years. The early years of our marriage were happy. Amanda advanced quickly at her marketing firm, eventually becoming a senior account manager. I continued my work as a public defender, finding deep satisfaction in helping those who needed it most. We traveled modestly but frequently, exploring national parks and occasionally taking short trips to nearby cities. Around our 5th anniversary, things began to subtly shift. Amanda started bringing up the topic of finances more frequently, particularly questioning why we did not live in a more upscale neighborhood given our dual incomes. "Sarah and Tom just bought in Westlake Hills," she would say, referring to her coworkers. "Their house has a pool and 4 bedrooms. We could afford something like that if you would consider private practice." These conversations became more frequent, creating a quiet tension between us. Amanda began spending more on designer clothes and expensive salon treatments, stretching our budget and sometimes using credit cards without discussing major purchases with me first. "I work hard," she would say when I expressed concern. "I deserve nice things." Then came the night of my father's 70th birthday celebration. After several glasses of champagne, my father made a toast that inadvertently revealed more than I had ever shared with Amanda. "To my son," he said, raising his glass, "who has always made me proud with his integrity and compassion. In 5 years, when the trust becomes yours, I know you will use it as wisely as you have used all the opportunities life has given you." I saw Amanda's expression change immediately, her eyes widening as she turned to look at me. Later that night, she bombarded me with questions about the trust my father had mentioned. "Why have you never told me about this?" she demanded as we drove home. "How much is in this trust fund?" I explained that I had not mentioned it because it was not currently part of our lives and would not be for several more years. When pressed, I reluctantly shared that the trust contained family investments worth approximately $2 million. From that night forward, Amanda's attitude toward our lifestyle changed dramatically. She began talking about moving to a larger house, trading in our practical cars for luxury models, and taking extravagant international vacations. "We have been living like we are broke, when all this time you had millions coming your way," she said during one heated discussion. "I feel like you have been lying to me for years." I tried to explain that I had not intentionally hidden the information, but simply did not consider the future trust as part of our current financial reality. I also shared my parents' philosophy that wealth was a responsibility, not just a means for personal indulgence. When the trust becomes available, I told her I want to use it thoughtfully. Set up college funds for our future children, maybe start a foundation to help fund legal services for disadvantaged communities. Amanda seemed to reluctantly accept my perspective, though I noticed her growing increasingly distant. She began working later hours, attending more client dinners and team-building events with her firm. I tried to be supportive of her career advancement, never questioning her frequent absences. If only I had paid more attention to the warning signs, perhaps I could have prepared myself for what was coming. But like many who trust completely, I was blind to the betrayal unfolding right before my eyes. The first indication that something was seriously wrong came on a Tuesday morning when Amanda did not come home from what she had called an overnight marketing retreat. When she still had not returned by Wednesday evening and was not answering my calls or texts, I began to worry that something had happened to her. I called her office only to be told by her confused assistant that there was no marketing retreat scheduled. In fact, Amanda had taken a week of personal leave. Increasingly concerned, I checked our joint bank account and discovered a withdrawal of $15,000 made the previous day. "This does not make any sense," I mumbled to myself as I stared at the transaction on my laptop screen. With growing anxiety, I began searching our house for any clue to Amanda's whereabouts. In her home office, I found travel confirmations hidden in her desk drawer for 2 first-class tickets to Bali, Indonesia. The reservations were in her name, and someone named Jason Harrington, a name I recognized as one of her co-workers. Still hoping for some rational explanation, I checked her email on our shared home computer. What I found shattered any remaining illusions. There were dozens of intimate exchanges between Amanda and Jason, dating back nearly a year, filled with explicit content and discussions of their future together. As I sat there numb with shock, I heard the notification sound from my phone. It was a text from Amanda. "By now you have probably realized I am not coming back. My lawyer will be in touch. I want half of everything, including your trust fund when you receive it. I have earned it after all these years." A second text quickly followed with a photo of her and a tall tanned man with his arm around her waist, standing on a beach with tropical drinks in hand. "Jason and I are building a new life. Do not try to contact me directly." The calculated coldness of these messages hit me like a physical blow. 8 years of marriage, and she had reduced our separation to a financial transaction. There was no apology, no explanation, not even a hint of remorse. In a daze, I walked through our home, seeing evidence of her calculated departure that I had somehow missed. Her expensive jewelry was gone. So were her designer handbags and the small antique music box that had belonged to her grandmother, one of her few sentimental possessions. On our bed, I finally found a manila envelope containing divorce papers and a handwritten letter. The documents had already been filled out, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting an equal division of all assets, specifically mentioning future disbursements from family trusts as part of the marital property to be divided. The letter was brief and brutally honest. "I have tried to be content with our modest life, but I want more. Jason and I connect on a level you and I never did. He understands my ambitions. We have been seeing each other for the past year, and I have never been happier. I am sorry to hurt you, but this is best for everyone. I expect a fair settlement for the years I invested in this marriage. Please do not make this difficult." The clinical nature of her betrayal was perhaps the most painful part. She had planned this escape for months, calculated the optimal time to leave, and expected to be financially rewarded for her infidelity. In her mind, our marriage had been nothing more than a long-term investment strategy, and now she was cashing out. That night, I barely slept. I alternated between crushing heartbreak and rage, replaying every moment of our relationship and wondering how much had been genuine. Had she ever loved me? Or had she simply been biding her time waiting for the trust fund she had learned about? The next morning I called my oldest friend Marcus, who happened to be a divorce attorney at a prestigious firm. She did what he exclaimed after I explained the situation. "And she expects half your trust fund, Basil. She has no legal claim to money you have not even received yet, especially if it is established as separate property in a trust created before your marriage." His words offered a small measure of relief, but the emotional devastation remained overwhelming. I took a week off work, unable to focus on my cases while my personal life imploded. During that time, I received several more taunting messages from Amanda, including photos of her and Jason at luxury resorts and on yachting excursions. "Just a preview of the lifestyle we will be enjoying permanently once the settlement comes through," one message read. Her assumption that she would be entitled to my family's money infuriated me. It was clear now that the trust fund had become her primary motivation for staying in our marriage, and perhaps had been since my father's revelation 3 years earlier. 2 weeks after Amanda's departure, I received a call from an unknown international number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Basil, it is me," Amanda said, her voice artificially sweet. "I wanted to talk directly about the divorce terms. My lawyer says things could get messy and expensive if we fight this out in court. Why not just agree to a 50-50 split of everything and avoid the drama?" Everything meaning what exactly, I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Well, the house, our investments, and of course your trust fund when it comes in," she replied casually, as if discussing a grocery list. "I was your wife for 8 years. I am entitled to half." "You were having an affair for the past year, while planning to abandon our marriage," I responded. "And you think that entitles you to my family's trust? Do not be bitter, Basil," she said with a condescending laugh. "It is not attractive. Besides, if you fight me on this, I have photos and text messages that would really embarrass you if they became public record in court. Remember that Christmas party at your firm?" She was referring to the one occasion I had drunk too much at a holiday gathering and needed her help getting home. Nothing inappropriate had happened, but she was threatening to twist the story into something scandalous that could damage my professional reputation. "Are you actually threatening to blackmail me?" I asked in disbelief. "I am just suggesting we find an amicable solution," she replied smoothly. $2 million is a lot for one person, but split between us, we can both still live very comfortably. Think about it. After hanging up, I felt a cold resolve form within me. The woman who had shared my bed, my home, and my life for 8 years was now attempting to extort money from me using threats and manipulation. Whatever love I still felt was rapidly being replaced by determination to protect myself from her predatory intentions. I called Marcus immediately and explained the new development. "She just made a huge mistake," he said firmly. "Threatening you is going to backfire spectacularly. Let me handle this." For the first time since finding Amanda's goodbye letter, I felt a glimmer of control returning. I might be heartbroken, but I would not be victimized further by someone who had already taken so much from me. With Marcus guiding me, I began a strategic response to Amanda's calculated betrayal. First, he advised me to stop responding to her messages entirely and to document everything she had sent, especially her implied blackmail threat. "Communication only through attorneys from now on," he insisted. "And we are going to need to involve your family's trust attorney as well." I contacted my parents, finally sharing the full situation with them. Though initially shocked and angered on my behalf, they quickly mobilized to help. My father connected me with Franklin Walsh, the attorney who had established and managed our family trusts for decades. Your trust was established when you were a minor, long before your marriage, Franklin explained during our meeting. Furthermore, it contains specific language classifying it as separate property that would not be subject to marital division under any circumstances. Amanda would have no legal claim to these assets. This confirmation provided some relief, but Marcus cautioned that Amanda could still attempt to make things difficult. She might not have a valid claim to the trust, but she will likely fight for a disproportionate share of your other marital assets, he warned. And given her threats, we need to be prepared for her to fight dirty. Over the next few weeks, Amanda's lawyer sent increasingly aggressive settlement demands, always emphasizing her expectation of receiving half of my future trust disbursement. Meanwhile, I discovered through credit card statements that Amanda had charged nearly $30,000 in the months before leaving, buying expensive clothing and jewelry I had never seen her wear. Clearly, she had been preparing for her new life while still married to me. Marcus helped me assemble a comprehensive case documenting Amanda's affair, her financial misappropriation, and her abandonment of the marriage. We also gathered evidence of all marital assets acquired through legitimate means during our marriage, which I was willing to divide fairly despite her betrayal. We need to be strategic about timing, Marcus advised. Right now she thinks she is in Bali building her new life with her boyfriend on your dime, waiting for the big payday from your trust. Let her keep thinking that while we prepare our counterposition. 4 weeks after Amanda's departure, her attorney filed formal divorce proceedings requesting half of all marital assets, including future disbursements from any trusts. The filing included insinuations about my character, suggesting I had been emotionally unavailable and had substance abuse issues, clearly laying groundwork for her threatened character assassination. Rather than responding immediately, Marcus suggested we wait the full allowed response period, letting Amanda continue her luxury vacation under the assumption that her intimidation tactics were working. Meanwhile, we prepared a comprehensive counterfiling. 6 weeks into the separation, I received another taunting message from Amanda. Just put a deposit on a beautiful villa in Bali. Cannot wait to furnish it with my half of everything. Your parents should have raised you to be more generous with your wife. The reference to my parents triggered a protective instinct I had not expected. This woman was not only attacking me, but disparaging the values my family had instilled in me. The final threads of any lingering affection snapped in that moment. The next day we filed our response to her divorce petition. It included first, a complete financial disclosure showing that our actual marital assets were far less substantial than Amanda likely believed, consisting primarily of our house equity retirement accounts and modest investments. Second, documentation from the trust attorneys confirming the separate property status of the family trust, including case law citations establishing that it could not be considered marital property under state law. Third, evidence of Amanda's affair, including emails, hotel receipts, and witness statements from colleagues who had seen her with Jason at various events while we were still married. Fourth, documentation of her financial misconduct, including the unauthorized withdrawal of $15,000 and excessive credit card charges in the months before her departure. Finally, a recording of her phone call attempting to intimidate me into agreeing to her demands, which our attorneys argued constituted attempted extortion. Rather than asking for punitive measures, our filing simply requested a fair division of actual marital assets based on contribution and equitable principles, explicitly excluding any claim to my family trust. 2 days after our response was filed, I received a furious call from Amanda. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "You are trying to leave me with nothing. After everything I have done for you, I am asking for a fair division of what we actually built together," I replied calmly. "The trust was never yours to claim, Amanda. It existed before you and I ever met. You think you are so clever," she hissed. "But I know things about you. I will tell everyone what you are really like behind closed doors." "You mean that I am exactly who I appear to be, a dedicated public defender who lived modestly and honestly while his wife was having an affair and maxing out credit cards? Go ahead and share that with the world." Her next words revealed the true depth of her miscalculation. "When your trust pays out on your birthday next month, half of that money is coming to me. I have already spent against that expectation. I deserve it for putting up with your boring life for 8 years. I almost felt sorry for her in that moment, realizing she had built an entire fantasy future on money she would never receive. Almost. "Amanda," I said quietly, "you might want to check the actual trust details with your attorney. My 35th birthday is next month, but the trust does not actually distribute funds on my birthday." There was a moment of confused silence before she responded. "What are you talking about? Your father said 5 years at his birthday party, and that was 3 years ago. The trust becomes accessible to me at 35, I explained. But the actual distribution requires a formal application process and board approval for specific purposes. It was designed that way specifically to prevent exactly this type of situation where someone might try to claim the money for frivolous purposes." The stunned silence on the other end of the line told me she was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her miscalculation. "You are lying," she finally whispered, but the conviction had drained from her voice. "Ask your attorney to request the full trust documents. It is all there in black and white. The money is not just handed over as cash. It requires a formal proposal for how it will be used, family board approval, and is typically distributed for specific purposes like education, starting a legitimate business, or charitable foundations, not for buying villas in Bali with affair partners." I heard her sharp intake of breath before she hung up. The next day, Marcus informed me that Amanda's attorney had requested a settlement conference, a dramatic shift from their previous aggressive stance. Apparently, after reviewing the trust documents, they had realized their strategy was fundamentally flawed. At the settlement conference, Amanda appeared via video call, looking noticeably less confident than in the taunting photos she had sent. The discussion was brief and surprisingly straightforward. She agreed to a division of our actual marital assets that favored me slightly, considering her financial misconduct and infidelity. She dropped all claims to my family trust and agreed to be responsible for the debts she had accumulated during her affair. "She overplayed her hand," Marcus explained afterward. "She built this elaborate plan around money she was never going to get spent beyond her means, assuming it would be covered, and now she is facing the consequences." A month later, our divorce was finalized with far less drama than I had anticipated. Amanda and Jason apparently cut their Bali trip short when reality set in about their financial situation. Through mutual friends, I learned they had returned to the States and were dealing with substantial credit card debt from their extravagant adventure. On my 35th birthday, instead of the carefree cash windfall, Amanda had imagined I submitted my first formal proposal to the trust board, requesting funds to establish a legal aid foundation for domestic violence survivors. My parents, who sat on the board, along with 2 family financial advisors, approved it unanimously. It has been 2 years since Amanda left, and the life I have rebuilt bears little resemblance to the one we shared. After finalizing the divorce, I sold our suburban house and moved to a comfortable apartment downtown, closer to the courthouse and the legal aid foundation I established with the first disbursement from my trust. The foundation now provides free legal services to over 100 domestic violence survivors annually, work that brings me profound satisfaction. I eventually transitioned from the public defender's office to running the foundation full-time, allowing me to help shape policy and expand services beyond what I could achieve as a single attorney. Through mutual friends, I occasionally hear updates about Amanda. Her relationship with Jason ended within 6 months of their return from Bali. The fantasy romance apparently could not survive the reality of everyday life and financial pressure. She struggled professionally after losing credibility at her firm due to her affair with a coworker and the manner of her departure. Last I heard, she had moved back to her hometown in Pennsylvania, working at a local marketing agency for significantly less than she earned in her previous position. The dreams of luxury villas and exotic vacations had been replaced by the reality of rebuilding her career from a considerable setback. For my part, I eventually started dating again, approaching relationships with both more caution and more authenticity. I am now seeing a wonderful woman named Julia, a pediatric nurse with a warmth and genuine compassion that reminds me daily of what real connection feels like. She knows about my family's resources, but seems completely uninterested in them, often suggesting simple, meaningful activities over extravagant options. "Why would we need an expensive dinner when making pasta together at home is so much more fun?" she asked on a recent evening flower, dusting her nose as we attempted homemade ravioli. The trust that Amanda so coveted continues to fund projects that create real impact rather than simply supporting a lavish lifestyle. After establishing the legal foundation, I have directed disbursements toward educational scholarships for first-generation college students and seed funding for community development projects in underserved neighborhoods. My parents, now in their 70s, frequently tell me how proud they are of how I handled the entire situation. "You took something painful and turned it into purpose," my father said recently. "That is the true measure of character." The most important lesson I learned through this ordeal is that true wealth has little to do with money. Amanda left believing she was entitled to financial compensation for years of marriage, but she overlooked the real treasure. She was abandoning the opportunity to build a life of meaning and purpose. I no longer harbor anger toward her. In a strange way, her betrayal freed me to create a life more aligned with my deepest values than the compromise we had been living. Her departure painful, as it was revealed that we had fundamentally different views of what makes life worthwhile. For anyone facing betrayal, especially when it reveals that someone loved you for what you had rather than who you are, remember that such revelations, while painful, are ultimately gifts. They clear the path for authentic connections and purpose aligned with your true self. The trust fund that Amanda thought would fund her escape ultimately helped me build something far more valuable than material comfort, a life of impact, genuine relationships, and inner peace that no amount of money could ever purchase. Have you ever discovered someone's true intentions after it was too late? How did you rebuild and find meaning after betrayal? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that endings often lead to better beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes what looks like loss is actually the universe clearing space for something far more valuable.